I'm so excited to introduce you to the best website designers out there. We have a brand new partnership with Session Sites. It is where good therapy meets brilliant design, and they get your website switched over or built in less than 2 weeks. They fine tune your messaging, use science backed user experience methodology, and work exclusively with mental health professionals. In fact, new clients right now are going to get 3 free therapy marketing strategy calls with their creative director of Session Sites if you book today. You're not going to want to miss this. Head on over to sessionsites.com/Joe. Again, that's sessionsites.com/Joe. Get the website of your dreams today. Sessionsites.com/Joe. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1188. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. We have been doing this Brighter Brain series, and it's been really fun. Before this, we did our Better Mental Wellness series. This Brighter Brain series, we talked about how do you focus on what's more important? How do you free up your brain bandwidth? We talked about treating trauma, all sorts of amazing things. We're going to be talking about how to prep for the Group Practice Boss Conference, and we've got 120 amazing group practice owners coming in. Our speakers are shorter, 20-minute kind of TED Talk style speakers, so you're not stuck in a room for 90 minutes listening to something that you could have heard in 10, and then lots of time to connect with other people. So we're super excited about the Group Practice Boss Conference here in Traverse City, and so that's just right around the corner. And then the next series that we're doing is the Future of series, and so we kick this off in episode 1200, the Future of Trust. We're going to be talking about that, and then after that, we're talking about the future of psychedelics with psychedelic researcher Erica Dick, who is just like one of the foremost researchers in regards to psychedelics. And so we're going to be talking about the future of all sorts of different things with experts. So that's going to be throughout the entire next month. So you're going to want to tune in to our Future of series. That's right around the corner. So many cool things happening here in the Practice of the Practice world. I'm so excited about the two guests that we have today. They have the Are We Happy Yet podcast. It's a podcast that explores why, despite growing accessibility and acceptance of mental health services, overall mental health in the United States continues to decline year after year. Friends and therapists Jane Thatcher Hahn and Hannah Buzzo explore culture. Maybe they create some culture too. They explore culture, capitalism, creativity, politics, technology, and more on their quest to try and understand the real causes of our mental health epidemic. Jane and Hannah, I'm leaving all that in there because sometimes I fumble. This recording is happening my first day back from a break, and clearly my brain's a little bit on break still. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Love it. Yeah. Connection over perfection, I'd say. So that's
Yeah. And to me, it's just like, you screw up, and some of like the things that people still cite have been random, just weird things that I've said just off the cuff that usually people would edit out. So, well, welcome to the podcast. I was on your show a bit ago, and what a fun interview that was. And, Jane, I've known you for a while. We've even hung out in person, which is always fun to interview someone I've hung out in person with here in Traverse City at Little Fleet, my favorite food truck area. So welcome to the show, both of you.
Thanks so much.
Jane, why don't we start with you? So you started a practice and Hannah was working there. Tell me a little bit about kind of your practice, and then how you guys, I won't have you go all the way to like how you started the podcast, but tell me about, Hannah working at your practice, and then we'll dig in after that.
Yeah. So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I also have spent a lot of time in my career making music, teaching music, performing music. So in 2019, I had been doing mostly creative projects and decided I wanted to get back into some counseling. So in 2019, I live in Denver, and so I kicked off a solo practice here, and also a solo practice about an hour away in Summit County, which that's like the Breckenridge world, kind of ski town area. And it turned out there was just a lot of need in that community. So I shut down my Denver practice and started my solo practice in what's called Silverthorne, Colorado, and pretty quickly got busy and started hiring people. I think Hannah was maybe my second or third hire. And she was one of those people that came along and we were like, this is a leader. This is somebody who's going to have their own practice. So she was with us for a little bit, which was great and so fun. And then she moved on to start her own group practice. So that was, let's see, 2025. Gosh, what do we call that? 6 years ago? Time flies. So
Mm.
that's how I got here.
Yeah, I love when someone moves on from wherever they're at, having sort of the blessing and support of the person that they are working with. I've
Mm,
long believed within practice the practice that we get to have people for a period of time, and sometimes that's 6 months, sometimes that's 6 years, and
yeah.
I want people to be able to level up within the business as much as they want to, but there's also times when the thing that they're going after just we can't serve, and that's not a smash on my ego, that's just that's the reality. And so some of my favorite supervisors I'm still friends with, and so that's great to hear. Hannah, tell me about that process of deciding to leave Jane's practice and go off and do your own thing.
Yeah, it was a hard decision. I love Jane so much, and she's created a really great team over there, and I was loving the work that I was doing. And so it was a really hard decision, but I had gotten more advanced training at that point in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, and I really wanted to make that a main focus of my clinical work. And Jane was totally supportive of that, but it just made sense for me. Like, if I'm going to essentially start this program at Jane's practice, like, there were no other psychedelic therapists. I was learning from the ground up to kind of do it for myself. And I come from an entrepreneurial family. My family really supported my idea to start my own business. And so it was definitely a risk, but I knew that that's eventually where I wanted to go. And I mean, I remember calling Jane and my heart was beating so fast. I was so nervous and so sad. But it ended up being a great decision, I think, for me and for Jane. And now we get to work together in this context, which has been really amazing and special. So I'm so grateful that I took that risk and thankful that Jane supported me, even though, I did leave. And, she could have easily seen me as like competition or competitor, but she didn't. And I'm so, so grateful for that.
Mm. Now, what did that look like as you were building that business, Hannah? Kind of what was hard about leaving and what was maybe easier than you thought?
What was hard about leaving, I think for me, was just the fear, right? Like, Jane had and has a really robust, busy practice. Like, everybody knows Jane and grit therapy. And no one really knew me. I mean, I think I was starting to make a name for myself, but it was not anything at all like had what Jane had created. And so it was really scary to go out on my own, right? Like, to think, oh, I'm responsible for everything. I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, I have to make money. There's a lot of pressure from that point. But it was hard in the fear based sense. But as soon as I took the leap and took the risk, things started working out. I mean, just how they always do, right? And that wasn't to say there's not challenges. We navigated so many challenges early in my business with insurance and contractors and office space. I mean, it was a wild ride. But the thing that really was great is the community that I created in Summit County with Jane. Like, I could call her and be like, hey, I'm running into this with an insurance company. What has been your experience? And she would talk to me about it. And I created other connections in the community. And so relying on people. And for me, I think sometimes it's been, that they're your competition, they're your competitors. I've really had to challenge that. And like, we're all working as a team, even though we have separate businesses. And so that has been such a important part for me in my business growth journey, is having that community of people.
Mm. Now, when did you guys first start talking about the podcast?
Beginning
Jane,
of last year, right, Hannah?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we had been kind of through these conversations around like group practice ownership. I mean, I started as a solo practice too, and then I evolved to a group practice. And, as Jane and I were hanging out and going for walks and happy hour, there are a lot of conversations between us about group practice and the good things about group practice, but also the challenges with group practice. And Jane's a musician. I'm not, but I think I'm a creative person. And I always knew that I wanted more out of my career and my business and life. And through those conversations about group practice ownership, there was this idea to kind of take our voice to the next level, have conversations that we have in the therapy room with people outside of it. And so, it was a conversation over time about, hey, like, we're both wanting more. We're both feeling a little stuck in group practice. Like, what can we do next? And the podcast kind of organically came up in that conversation.
Hmm. Jane, what about you? What was exciting about planning the podcast?
I think similarly to Hannah, there were these bigger, broader patterns that we were seeing within the mental health world that we didn't feel like were necessarily being addressed, at the educational level or even just within the general conversation about mental health, even though everybody seems to be talking about it so consistently and so constantly at this point. I mean, all therapists have their one client that comes in and is like, I'm going to read you these 17 TikToks that I read since I saw you last, and like, TikTok therapy and all of that stuff. But I think we were just ready to challenge some of the themes that we were seeing, some of the things that we were seeing that were not working, and to really dig in with this, like, why is mental health decreasing? Why are we less satisfied, less happy, less connected if we're talking about mental health more? So I think that was just an exciting piece for me, and an exciting piece as therapists. We all get stuck with some clients, and those are some of those stuck moments and stuck points are some of the things that we address and talk about on the podcast. I'm also a Leo. I'm a performer. So like, put me in front of a mic and I'm like super happy to just yap on and on and on or whatever, So that performance piece is fun for me.
Well, and I love the idea of the podcast. I mean, the idea of Are We Happy Yet? So tell me a little bit about that in regards to both of your own journeys. Why is Are We Happy Yet? I think it's a great title. But tell me what that means to you. And also maybe, is there some personal reflection that made its way into that title too?
Yeah, props to Jane on that title. She came up with that one. But it is a great title. And for me, and I think like the mission of the podcast through my own life and through my work as a therapist and building this business in the mental health space and like being a human on the planet in 2025, I really have found that we've all been told, sold, programmed to believe like a certain thing, a certain lifestyle, certain accomplishments, a certain set of life factors make a happy life. And what I was finding in my own life is like, okay, well, I have the house, I have this business, I'm engaged, I have 2 dogs, what's going on? I'm like craving more. I'm not happy, right? But yeah, I'm getting all this external feedback of, you're doing great. I'm so impressed with you. Wow, my bank account is growing. My friends list is growing, but inside I'm like dying, to be honest. And it really was that reflection of like, okay, everything I've been taught to believe will make me happy, being able to buy, whatever I want on Amazon, being able to travel when I want, being able to make my own schedule, like that's not quite it. And so for me, it was really this point of like, what are my values? Like, what do I enjoy doing? What lights me up? And as cliche as that sounds, I mean, a lot of it's just having honest conversations. Like me and Jane would have a lot of these conversations that we have on the podcast not being recorded. And so I think even in the title of the podcast, in the pursuit of the podcast, has been my own pursuit of what really makes me happy, which is being honest, using my voice, connecting with people, being curious, learning. And it's been a really wonderful exercise in that.
What have you guys discovered as you've done these interviews and had these conversations?
I think, one of the core things that came out, we started we launched our podcast last year. So it was our, first year of sort of learning, figuring out, defining. But I think one of the things that we learned was really that almost all people have been peddled some story about what is good for them and what will make them happy. And almost all people can identify that and tell you what that is. And at some point, have figured out that that's not the thing that really truly is doing it for them. So I think that was a big learning point for me. I think realizing that it's through these people's, first we were like experts and all these people with, big reach, like those people are great to have on the podcast, but it's really, I mean, even your interview, Joe, was all about your story and what you've been through and what you've experienced. And that's what made it so interesting and engaging, and really hits home the point, I think. Um, and just to add to what Hannah said about like our own personal journey with the question of are we happy yet? So I was actually raised like a true blue Salt Lake City Mormon, and left the church at 14. So I've just had kind of revolutions in my life. My first revolution was leaving the church. And so that first story was what's going to make you happy is, religion, family, and like getting married very young and having lots of children. And that makes some people really happy. And I have lots of space for that and want to make lots of space for that. But that wasn't my story. And then I got into playing music. And then my story was what will make me happy is fame and money, recognition. And then when I didn't achieve that, or at the moments when I did, that wasn't making me happy. So just sort of exploring these revolutions and like with Hannah, trying to get to a point where you figure out like what really, and happy maybe isn't even the word as much as alive or connected, are those are kind of the things I'm really looking for now.
Hannah, what about you? What were there any messages that you got that maybe inform your pushback on what happiness is?
Yeah, one thing as like a therapist, spiritual self-help junkie, I like have a stack of self-help books the size of Texas. One thing that I've really learned and I think accepted is my contentment, my happiness, like, is not out there. I'm not going to read it in a book. There's like really nothing new information wise that I can gain. Like, what would it be like for me to just live my life right now? And that doesn't mean I don't grow. That doesn't mean I don't improve. But instead of, being on this endless journey of healing and improving my relationship and working on my anxiety, like, what if I just enjoy my life how it is? It's really been a freeing feeling having all these conversations. Like, everyone has a story, like Jane said, and everyone has struggles. And I've been taught and throughout like therapy and being in a personal growth field, grow, get to this point of health, get to this, get to this, get to this. And it's like, oh, I'm good just where I am. I can still grow and enjoy my life. I can still change things about myself and accept myself. So that's been a huge reflection for me.
As a therapist, I can tell you from experience that having the right EHR is an absolute lifeline. I recommend using Therapy Notes. They make billing, scheduling, note-taking, telehealth, and e-prescribe incredibly easy. Best of all, they offer live telephone support that's available 7 days a week. You don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research and see for yourself. Therapy Notes is the #1 highest rated EHR system available today, with a 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com and on Google. All you have to do is click the link below or type promo code Joe on their website over at therapynotes.com and receive a special 2-month trial absolutely free. Again, that's therapynotes.com and use promo code Joe on the website. If you're coming from another EHR, Therapy Notes will also import your demographic data quick and easy at no cost, so you can get started right away. Trust me, don't waste any more of your time and try Therapy Notes. Just use promo code Joe at checkout. As you've interviewed people and had these conversations, have you noticed any things that are the biggest, maybe things that create shifts in consciousness or shifts in how people are approaching the way they view their own happiness, or they emphasize or de-emphasize their own happiness?
I think that psychedelics are a big piece of that. I don't know if those are if you're asking like specific things people are using to sort of shift the story. Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
yeah, or
Yeah.
it could be experiences, could be psychedelics,
Yeah.
could be yeah, like what are maybe common things you keep hearing from people?
I think people are starting, if they're paying attention and talking about this question, they're starting to slow down. They're starting to question their relationship to work and busyness and work, I'm putting work ethic in quotes. I think creativity frees people in really profound ways and gets them thinking about things differently. Um, I think connecting with some sort of spirituality, whatever that may be, we're there's like a great de-churching, so people aren't engaged in organized religion as much, but they still are very spiritual, so they want to connect with some spiritual guidance. So I'm seeing a lot of that with my clients, my friends and family. I think the psychedelic world is very cool for that. um, I don't know, Hannah, what else would you add to that?
Yeah, I think work and busyness is a theme. I think, yeah, a lot of people are talking about psychedelics. The one thing that I've taken away from the podcast in almost every interview, and they've been so different, whether it's been about like work, or yesterday we just did an amazing one with someone who was in the military, like all walks of life, all different um, types of people. Everyone has brought up the word community. Everyone has brought up the word connection. Everyone has talked about how important it is to connect with people in your real life and, you know, not be connecting in the phone on Zoom with, you know, in that way, but connecting in real life, in person, face to face with friends, family, whoever. And so that's been a big theme too, is people, I mean, I know with like AI and stuff, who knows what's going to happen, but people are really craving and wanting and love in person connection. And I would argue like need it to survive. And so that's been a big theme in all the podcast interviews too, is learning people's different experiences with their community and people and relationships in their lives.
Mm. Yeah, so it's interesting because I think that kind of that work and emphasis on work and emphasis on the things we thought would make us happy, it's almost like we're realizing that they were distractions from the things that actually do make us happy. You know, that time in community, that time being present, with all the ups and downs. Like, what I talked about on your podcast, my major life shift out of being married and becoming an unexpected single dad and just having a lot of stuff hit the fan that I had thought was the message of, you're going to have a good life and that this is what that looks like. But to see what I feel now, and I maybe I'd label it happiness, but it's like a deeper contentment with I really enjoy my life. I have a partner that is so emotionally intelligent and pushes me to be a better person in a much different way than before. To have that time with my kids and to reevaluate what I want to make my life into really wouldn't have happened had I not gone through such difficult times. How do difficult times seem to play into when you're talking to guests or even in your own lives in regards to seeking happiness or contentment?
That does come up a lot. We spent a lot of time just yesterday talking about this. One of the things that Hannah and I have noticed in the industry and just in the general sort of culture zeitgeist is there is this focus on comfort and like immediate pleasure and sort of ease, I think. And ease is important. I believe in ease and seeking that. And I also believe that there is that the struggle is very important for all of us. And in working with clients, and I think this is one of the issues that I have with the field is if we're so focused on symptom reduction or getting people to feel better, sometimes we avoid this going in and feeling the pain and working through the pain and really acknowledging what you've been through, who you are, your full experience, and fully integrating the whole story. So I think that we're averse to struggle. We have a cultural story around it should be easy and there shouldn't be problems. And Hannah and I read a lot of Oliver Berkman, and he talks about life is just a series of problems, and that refocusing your lens that way to say like, yes, problems are just going to continue to come up. That's part of my life. It just helps make it so much less painful and so much easier to face them head on and deal with them. And I've had some pretty big losses and significant rejections, and I wouldn't at this point trade them for anything. That being said, I would never have said that in the moment. So just to just to
Mhm.
acknowledge, right? In the moment you can't say that probably, but I wouldn't trade those things for anything personally.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add to that too, I think you're exactly right there, Jane, and it has been a big message. And I think too, a message and a theme that we've had come up on the podcast is like, if there is a problem, if something is hard, if you're not getting what you want, work harder. It's your fault. Right. And so I
Mm,
think that's been a theme too, is like, I really believe so much is out of our control. And that's come through on the podcast interviews too. But, it's not a personal flaw. It's not a deficit if things are hard because they don't appear hard to other people or on social media or the book says this, whatever the thing is. But I think that's been a piece too of how individuals feel so like broken and bad and less than because of the narrative of if you just work harder, you can get whatever you want.
and also, Hannah, that the world we live in is fine and there's no
Yeah.
issues with it. And so if you're not adjusted to it, you're the problem. That's one of the big issues I have. I don't believe in that message. I think there's a lot of things going on that don't culturally that don't actually support our best interest as humans. So I think a lot of people feel like, yeah, again, there's something wrong with me because I'm anxious or I'm depressed or I'm trying to work through trauma or I have OCD. It's so internalized as opposed to sort of an outward like, well, this is not actually set up for me to get all the community that I need, or this is not actually set up for me to have all the creative experiences that I want, or I'm actually working a crazy amount, but it's so normalized that then people have an additional pain point of blaming themselves and having shame and feeling like they should be adjusted. And as a therapist, I strongly believe that my job is not to adjust clients to the world that we live in. And that may fly, I guess, in the face of what some other therapists believe. But yeah, I'm more interested in getting them more in touch with their authentic self and their true needs as a human and working through that shame piece.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that there's such a there's a nuance to it with clients too, where sometimes you're working on developing those coping skills that maybe people don't have to be able to be fully present. There's other times that you just sit with the pain or the grief or the anxiety, and you encourage them to just sit in it and to see what comes up, and allowing that client to really lead that process and get more in touch with themselves. I think is one of the more the art side than the science or checklist side of therapy. I'm wondering for each of you, like how are you guys talking about kind of the future of the podcast? Because I think there's a lot of listeners that they think, oh, I'd love to do a podcast. I don't know where to start and all that. And we have tools over at Podcast Launch School to help people with that. But if you're thinking about like your future of your podcast, what kind of discussions are the two of you having about how to sustain it, how to grow, how to monetize it? Or maybe you're not having those conversations. Maybe right now it's purely for kind of your own, just as a hobby, something that you just want to do because you enjoy. So how are you guys talking through where this podcast goes?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we're probably in the middle of those two things. We've started when we first started, it was like, let's get some episodes out there and get some people to listen, right? And throw a big party. And it's evolved to now we don't really have an end goal in mind. We've not talked about, we have to monetize this by this time, but we have talked about how do we want this to continue to look. And so a couple of things that we've recently done is we've changed some of the angle of the podcast, meaning that like we really do want to showcase people's stories and hear from folks about what have you been told or have you believed about happiness that you found out is no longer true. And we really want to be kind of this anti-advice place where people can turn on their podcast and not have another supplement to buy, not have another thing to add to their morning routine and just be able to listen to real conversations. And so we've talked about that we really want to commit to those two things. And another thing that we've talked about too, which we're excited about this year, is every month we're going to choose a different cause and we're going to donate money to each cause so we can actually help create change and in that way. So that's another way that we're evolving the podcast.
And I'd add to that, one of the reasons that I love working with Hannah and wanted to do projects with her is because Hannah is one of those people who's willing to start something and not know necessarily how it's going to turn out. That's one of the things that I think great leaders have the capacity to not know where things are going and not get stuck and mired in the details or perfectionism, to launch things and follow them. And that's one of my core values as a person and as a creative. And so I think it's been really cool to be on that journey with her of what is this? Clearly, we're drawn to sharing, talking. We're drawn to this platform. So we continue to get together and have conversations about what's working, what's not working, how to, like, what is the angle? What is important about this? And so I appreciate having a partner that I can continue to say, like, maybe we don't know exactly the prescriptive end goal, but we know that the process is important. And I think that's coming through on the podcast. I mean, when we started, like, the audio was so tricky to figure out. Even when we did Joe's podcast, we were like, I don't know how to do all that. I think all of it is just tricky, And so I think if someone's thinking about starting a podcast, I would say, like, you got to get out there and be willing to not be good at it and be willing to not understand the tech and be willing to have people hear you in an unscripted, imperfect way.
So awesome. Well, we have a ton of resources over at podcastlaunchschool.com for people to start a podcast, to get support with their podcast. But I want to end with our final question. And Hannah, we'll start with you. If every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that I think done is better than perfect. And I'm not saying put bad work out there, but I love podcasts. I've always wanted to be on a podcast for years and years and years. And finally I was like, why don't I just start one if I want to be on one so bad? And so, and like Jane said, the tech, it's definitely not perfect, but I think, whatever it is, if it's your website, if it's a marketing thing you want to do, if it's a training, like, I think done is better than perfect. And that gets you closer to where you want to be.
Yeah. And then I think for me, I would say, if you are a private practice owner, whether you have an individual or a group practice, I would just encourage you to not over-identify with your practice and your business. Having a group practice is awesome. I love it. I think we put good work into the world. I'm really proud of my clinicians. I'm proud of what we've done, and I try and have it be as little of a part of my identity as possible. That is my work world. That is my income stream, and that is not who I am, and that is not how I want to relate to people. So I try and not let it be I try and really leave it separate from the identity piece for me, so that I could be free to be human and creative and be something else besides a business owner or a therapist.
So awesome. Well, the Are We Happy Yet podcast is out there on all the different podcast streaming services. Other than listening to the podcast, how can people connect with you if they want to hear more?
Yeah, I have a group practice in Colorado called Alchemy Therapy and Wellness. Alchemy is spelled ALCHEMY, Alchemy Therapy and Wellness. And also we have our Are We Happy Yet website and Instagram. So if you have any interest on the podcast, you can get a hold of us that way.
And to find my private practice, we're just at grittherapy.com.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Fun. Yeah.
Well, we have tons of resources over at practiceofthepractice.com. We have articles, we have other podcasts, so all sorts of things over there at Practice of the Practice. Also, we could not do this without our amazing sponsors. Therapy Notes is our sponsor today. They are the best EHR out there, the best electronic health records. They'll help you transition from your current EHR. They have HIPAA compliant video as a part of it. They help with the billing. It's so streamlined. It's awesome. So head on over to therapynotes.com and use promo code Joe at checkout to get a couple months for free. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music. And this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.